Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. If this is your first time checking out a video, please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of Get Up. I'm talking about Justin Fields, and if he has a higher ceiling than Kenny Pickett, and if the Steelers should go after him. This is an interesting question to me, because the real question is to me is how good of an OC do you think the Steelers OC is now, Arthur Smith? Because if you think he's a really great OC and really knows what he's doing, and he just wasn't a good head coach, but he's a great offensive mind, which I'm not necessarily saying he is or he isn't, then going out and getting Justin Fields to me would make a lot of sense. And I'll unpack why I think that is. I want to see what they have to say first, but I definitely have some thoughts with regards to potentially moving on from Kenny Pickett, because the reality is that the whole idea with Kenny Pickett is that when you get a quarterback who's like a 4-year starter, who's played a lot of football in college, and they're not like athletic freaks, the argument is that they don't have a lot more to grow in the NFL. There's only so much more that they're going to be able to do. They're not this raw physical talent that you're going to be able to mold with a great offensive mind, or just a great, coaching, or put him with other great players, or if it's just a younger player in general that didn't get all the snaps in college. And so now it's like, okay, there's still a lot more to develop, a lot more in-game experience. But that's why, so it's like with Kenny Pickett, it's kind of like, there's the argument that with these types of quarterbacks, you just know who they're going to be. But with a Justin Fields, or with, obviously most famously like a Patrick Mahomes or these other players, it's like these players are just such raw talent, or just such athletic freaks. Like a Lamar Jackson maybe is a better example than a Patrick Mahomes, is that those players actually need time to bake, that they do not necessarily hit the ground running, although ironically they're running quarterbacks, because that's also the thing. When you are a big running quarterback and you have those legs, it's very easy for them to rely on that just throughout their career in general, let alone in the NFL. And so it takes more time to develop their other skill set, and have them, develop a presence in the pocket, and just better, better and more consistent offensive reach, just everything, however you really want to define a passing game, whatever variables and indicators that we want to use, that it just takes more time for those players, and that they kind of deserve more grace in a lot of ways. And the problem is that a lot of times those players don't always go to offensive minds. So then they struggle, and then they don't really develop, and it's like, well, see, these guys are awful. So that's why you don't just want to necessarily give up on Justin Fields. Not saying that I think he's this great quarterback and he's just like an Andy Reid coach away from being, the next Patrick Mahomes. But if you are the Steelers, I do think you have a great idea who Kenny Pickett is. And so if you can get a Justin Fields for not too much, I think it's not a bad move, because you can then even keep Justin Fields. You can even just keep him as a backup, or develop him, or just see what you have a little good old-fashioned QB, competition, and see what happens. But yeah, I don't think it's a terrible idea. I would rather have that than Russell Wilson.
They have pretty good weapons, right? Is he?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
No, I totally disagree. Justin Fields is a better football player than Kenny Pickett. The numbers back it up, as Hebo reminded me. 20% more explosive plays from Justin Fields. And when you look at what Arthur Smith in particular did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee in the 2-year span over 2019 and 2020, Ryan Tannehill led the NFL in yards per pass. And I think Justin Fields has a very similar skill set. I think the Steelers are really scary if they could add Justin Fields, who has a much higher ceiling than Kenny Pickett.
If I'm not mistaken, Justin Fields is actually younger than Kenny Pickett also.
Yes,
he's been in the league longer, but I think he's actually, someone said this morning that he's
9 months younger.
Tim, give me the evaluations. Give me the QB quick read. Fields versus Pickett.
Yeah, look, Granny, you're exactly right. I mean, look, there's talent in Pittsburgh, so there's part of the evaluation. He was supposed to be a ready-made prospect, to your point about his age. He was, older than a lot of guys that were drafted the year prior to him being drafted. I think everyone in the first round, he was older than them. So he was this ready-made prospect. Through 2 years, he's thrown 13 touchdowns, and 13 picks. That's not good enough for a guy that was not a developmental prospect. He started 24 games in the pros. He's thrown.
But that's just not fair because their offense has been terrible, and it's not necessarily because of Kenny Pickett. Okay, again, they just got a new OC. Like, it's just, this idea is just not on him. The OC for the Steelers was clearly not working for years. Okay, and it took them, and the Steelers take forever to fire someone. They never want to fire or let anyone go. Then they finally had to do it because they were just like, this offense is terrible. So again, just like how people are saying, well, hey, let's give Justin Fields the benefit of the doubt for not being great in Chicago. Then if that's your belief, then you would have to have the same belief for Kenny Pickett.
More than one touchdown in a game, just one time. Mike T is exactly right. The ceiling is way higher with Justin Fields, and because of the unique situation in Chicago, the fact that you could get your hands on a player as talented as Justin Fields to add to your already talented group, especially on the offensive side, I think makes all kinds of sense.
Talk to me, Graz.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that word ceiling is the key here, right? Because we still don't know on Justin Fields. Like, we haven't seen him flourish. We've seen flashes, but we've also seen some of the issues that he's had. So he needs to develop further. But what he does do is make you scarier. And you're playing in a division, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, where every single team had a winning record and 3 of them made the playoffs. You need a higher ceiling offense in order to compete and get where you want to go. And I don't think Kenny Pickett is scaring defenses. I don't think he makes you hard to play against. And Justin Fields would. Even if you wanted to build the run game, right, around Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, like, that changes if you put someone with Justin Fields' running ability at quarterback. That makes it a lot harder to play. So I think Terry Bradshaw is not thinking as big as the Steelers need to be thinking at the quarterback position.
Greedy, there's a massive sense of urgency. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I've probably already talking to Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears because I know Atlanta very likely is in this as well. And if I'm Pittsburgh, I got to get Kirk Cousins. I have to either get Justin Fields or probably trade up from the 8th pick. So those conversations are happening right now. When we get to Indy next week, these deals will be finalized. And when you deal with the complexities of the salary cap, a cash budget, draft choices, those conversations take weeks and weeks and weeks. So I'm sure they're happening right now. And I think Justin Fields will be traded by next week.
That's
So, oh wait, that's
the point that I was making when I said in the open, Justin wants it over. It will be any time now. Next week is when that deal got done with the Bears last year, and I think we expect it then. And to me, as far as do you want to trade for him, look, it's pretty simple. If Justin Fields this year was available in the 2nd round, wouldn't every team be desperately trying to get him? Well, he's available for a 2nd-round pick, we think.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that seems...
I think that would get it done.
We think a 2 and something, right? Like a 2 and a 4 or something like that.
That's where it gets interesting. Where's your 2, right? If Atlanta's offering a better 2nd-round pick than Pittsburgh is, then what does Pittsburgh have to offer to make up that difference, right? So, but I do think a 2nd-round pick is what the package gets built around.
Tim, give me a final thought.
Well, think about it this way. If the Bears were picking, I don't know, 15 through 20, would they even be in the quarterback conversation of replacing Justin Fields? They wouldn't be. So is he, worthy of a second? Yeah, because they would be totally fine keeping him and building around him if they weren't picking at the very top of the draft.
So again, I think my biggest argument though is that if we think that Justin Fields is worthy of another try in another situation, then I'm confused why you wouldn't say that Kenny Pickett is worthy of another try, right? If you said, well, Kenny Pickett didn't flourish, well, then you can't say that Justin Fields, if you're saying that and you're using that as against him, then you could say the same thing. Justin Fields doesn't flourish either. And they have all the same, very similar issues within terms of the organizational issues with regards to having a quarterback thrive and to be able to get the best out of him. So I'm just kind of confused by this in that regard. I understand the eye test makes you believe someone like a Justin Fields has more potential and a higher ceiling, right? Because you're just like, look what he can do. And he does. He has some of those moments where you're like, oh my God, if we can just harness this, we got like a poor man's, Patrick Mahomes, like, let's go. And that's just not always the case. And if you watch a lot of the Bears games, you could see that, especially when the game mattered, they didn't trust Justin Fields. you could just see the plays that were being called. They never pushed the ball downfield. They never set Justin Fields up to be like, all right, go do this. It was always these very short dump off passes or just like, okay, scramble and put your head down and make something happen. And don't get me wrong, when he scrambled and did some of those plays of just make something happen, it was wildly exciting. And you are kind of like, oh man, if we can develop this player, like, and you have that part of your tool belt, like this dude could be unstoppable because he even looks like stronger and just more durable than say even like a Lamar Jackson or like a Patrick Mahomes. Not saying he's better than those players, but just something about his physicality, just the way he looks, is he just looks like he's more solid. Whether it's actually true or not, it's just like what he looks physically. Whether it's just the level of his muscle tone, honestly. Like Jalen Hurts, for instance, is a more mobile quarterback, although doesn't run like the way that Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson does. But he doesn't look that way. And Jalen Hurts is a beast, right? Jalen Hurts can squat 1,000,000 pounds, and he is a beast in that regard. But it just, again, this is just a pure aesthetic way, right? This is definitely like an unscientific eye test, if you will. But I think it influences that. I think it influences. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because it influences people's perceptions of things, right? You just, when someone looks like a ball player, looks fit, looks ready, looks quick and twitchy and fast, you start to build up these these characteristics that may or may not actually exist. And to me, that's when it starts to get a little bit trickier with judging someone like a Justin Fields. I do think Justin Fields is worthy of another try, and I would love to see him in a situation with a legit offensive coordinator. Like, I would love to see him with a team, and I know these are not possible, but I would love to see him with like Detroit, and I would love to see him with Cliff Kingsbury, honestly, in with the Washington Commanders, and not necessarily with those teams. Although I would like to see him with Detroit because Detroit is legit, but really more because of the offensive coordinator and the offensive coaching culture there. That to me is what makes more sense, or where I would want to see where I would be like, okay, and if he doesn't thrive, then I say, all right, not good enough. And again, I know some people make the argument that Arthur Jones, that the OC is for the Steelers. Arthur Jones is like a old school fitness guy. But I could see that argument for Pittsburgh, but I'm not seeing that. It's just, it's a trickier situation because historically Pittsburgh has not had these booming defenses or these booming offenses, right? It's been such a defense culture in that regard. Obviously I know there's some outliers with Big Ben, but even that was different, and Big Ben was also a very specific type of quarterback, right? Talk about the eye test and just looking at a quarterback, you would would never look at someone like Ben Roethlisberger and say that's a big time quarterback. Like you would be like, who the heck is that guy? Did that guy just sneak onto the field? Like what the heck? Like he was a very unique physical athlete in his own right. I'm weary of Justin Fields being able to make magic out there, but at the same time, the benefit, and this will be my final thought, the benefit of a Justin Fields is that if things are going bad and if things are just not happening with the team, a player like a Justin Fields does have the ability to make something out of nothing more than, say, a Kenny Pickett. And I think that's ultimately why we say that he has a higher ceiling. Because if things are going really right, and you could put Justin Fields in a position to succeed, then he should be able to do so with flying colors. And if things are kind of spiraling out of control and it's a bad game or it's super windy and rainy and the conditions are messed up, right? Put it this way. A perfect example of this, I think, would be Justin Fields. Let's say he's playing with Miami Dolphins and he's going up against Patrick Mahomes in the freezing cold, negative 30 degrees. In a lot of ways, you would say, I'd rather have Justin Fields than Kenny Pickett, because you kind of think that Justin Fields would maybe be able to just make something happen, because he has the potential to rip off for like literally like a literal 60-yard run, right? Like you could do that. And Kenny Pickett is obviously just not necessarily that player. But with that said, Justin Fields, because he can do some of these things, can also make a bad situation even worse or a good situation even worse. And that you don't necessarily get that same aspect with, say, a Kenny Pickett, someone who's potentially making better decisions, and also not relying on some of these other more over-the-top fantastical plays, which then keeps Kenny Pickett more, like that's why Kenny Pickett ends up being more of like a system quarterback, which I think gets such a bad rap. But that's the problem. If Kenny Pickett is not in a good system, then he can't thrive. And honestly, what it really reminds me of is when James Harden in basketball this past season, he said, like, I am the system. I am the offense. And I think when you have the players like the Lamar Jacksons and the Justin Fields of the world, they're like, I am the offense. I am the system. Kenny Pickett's not like, I am the system. I am the offense. So he's so much more at the mercy of the people around him and the coaching staff. So I wouldn't necessarily give up on Kenny Pickett, but I'm also not like, if I have the chance to get a really good quarterback, I'm not like, no, man, Kenny Pickett's our guy. Let's go. But this will definitely be my final thought. That is and always will be the biggest drawback of not having a true, legit offensive head coach that you can just trust unconditionally is there to maximize your quarterback, because the quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. And if you don't have a true offensive head coach, you can't successfully and clearly evaluate your quarterback. So when you're in this situation, you can't be like, I don't know, is Kenny Pickett really not good, or was it the OC or this or that? You can't do that. If Andy Reid has a quarterback that's not playing well, you just know that quarterback is not good enough. Okay? But if you're in the situation that the Steelers are in, you're like, well, I don't know, well, we did just hire a new OC, like maybe that'll change things, or I don't know. And what about Justin Fields? He's coming from this team that like didn't have a good coordinator and like, didn't have an offensive head coach. Like, it just becomes messier. But when you get the offensive head coach, when you have Sean McVay, when you have Shanahan, when you have Andy Reid, when you have that locked and loaded, and now we're adding Shane Steichen to the mix. And I forget, did I say Hardball? When you have that locked and loaded, and Peyton, when you have that, if Kenny Pickett is not playing good enough, then you just know, and then you really trust the coach. If the coach says, nope, we got to get him out of here. And again, that's what Andy Reid did with Alex Smith. He said, Alex Smith is great. We're getting to the playoffs. We're playing well. We need better. If we want to win, we need better. We're getting Patrick Mahomes. That's what it takes. Peyton was like, Russell Wilson is not good enough. If we're looking at this on a long-term perspective, we need to get better. Boom, let's get better. They can make those decisions, and you can trust them and not look back. And that's the biggest problem to me that both really the Bears face and the Steelers face. And now they're trying to do business together, and it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like two blind organizations leading the blind, which is kind of fascinating because they're two very iconic organizations that had their heyday like millions of years ago, and in modern times they just haven't been. And they both have such this like defensive culture, hard, we're gonna grind out tough games, we're gonna win, this like weird score of 12-9, and it's like, okay, you go do that, enjoy that. While Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Herbert and Hurts and Tom Brady and all these other quarterbacks are lighting everyone up, putting up points. The rules are changing to be more offensive driven, and it's all about points. Go ahead. There's a reason why you're getting the same results season after season after season. And the teams that prioritize their offensive culture and their offensive players and make sure that they get the quarterback position right, they are the teams that consistently win and consistently have a chance at winning the Super Bowl. No one in their right mind believes that the Steelers have had any recent chance of winning a Super Bowl, or the Bears. And people might say, like, what if Josh Allen hasn't won a Super Bowl, Joe Burrow? But they always legitimately have a chance. Always. Always. I don't care what anyone says. They always have a true, legitimate chance. No one in their right mind thinks that the Steelers or the Bears have had any recent chance at winning a Super Bowl. And if you do, please let me know the season below, and I will look it up because I'm just not seeing it personally. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, please let me know. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. We are building something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and it's really turning into something special. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.